Good evening, everyone. Good evening to everyone here in our LA studio. I guess that's appropriate. And hi to everyone in New York. Thank you so much for joining us via live stream for this very special Q&A with Jackie. At this point, please join me in welcoming an actress who, it's kind of unfair, she has been so good for so long, starting at such a young age with films like The Professional, doing everything from movies like Black Swan to Thor. And of course, for her role in Jackie, she has been nominated for a SAG Award, a Golden Globe Award, and won the Critics' Choice Award for Best Actress. Please welcome Natalie Portman. Thank you so much for being here. Congratulations.
Thank you so much for having me and for watching tonight. I know it's a big night to be going out, so thank you. And look at those nice couches.
I know, right?
I understand.
Careful, the people in New York might get jealous. I think, they might. I think they sit on cardboard boxes there. Well, this is an audience of SAG actors, and so I always like to start by asking, how did you get your SAG card?
I think I just got it when I did my first film when I was 11, which was very lucky. So it was The Professional. And
that was your first movie.
That was my SAG card, so I was lucky to get in early.
I just have to ask, as a fan of that movie, do you ever bump into Jean Reno?
The funniest thing is that we did Jackie at Luc Besson, the director, has studios outside of Paris in Saint-Denis, and we filmed this at his studios, the interiors, and so I would see him every morning. It felt very full circle. No, I was like, oh, I'm probably ending my career with this movie because I saw him every morning at work because he was preparing Valerian, his new sci-fi movie at the same time. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm just saying that you guys could have made a sequel while you were, in between scenes. So obviously you weren't alive when this story took place, but I feel like everything about the Kennedys is so in our consciousness. Did you sort of think you knew this story, and did your opinion of that change when you got the script?
Yeah, I don't know that I was ever really deeply aware of the story, but of course it's such a part of our culture, our American identity, and we revere the Kennedys. And when I heard that they were sending me this, that Darren was sending me the script, I was like, well, how much more is there to tell? And, it's been done, and what are we going to bring that's new? And then seeing Noah Oppenheim's work, the writer of the script, it brought this entirely new understanding that she was she crafted this myth with such an incredible detail of history that spoke to so many sort of the hidden parts of the Kennedy story, and also the very strong woman to author her own narrative.
I mean, what was it like first reading that script? You hear actors say, I couldn't put it down, but literally seeing this movie, I was like, I didn't know what was going to happen next, and I'm like, well, obviously I know what happens, but, I was really on the edge of my seat.
Yeah, I think it's really remarkable when you see all of these, small details that you don't think about. You don't think about, oh, of course, after he was shot, they had a 7.5-minute ride to the hospital. And what was that? What was that moment? We know the moment when he's shot so well, but then there's this aftermath that's just an eternity. Or she had to go home that night and take off those clothes, or she had to decide whether to wear those clothes or change on the plane, and she had to go tell her children. It's all those moments that when you hear it, you're like, oh, of course, that's the moment that comes after. But until you actually are provided with that, those reality and those specific moments, it doesn't occur to you, and it's not part of the history and that we regularly see. So it was incredible that Noah and Pablo, our director, also added a lot of that in the ride to the hospital, the moving. I mean, those details that you just are so unbelievably, unimaginably terrible that you wouldn't think about naturally.
I want to talk about Pablo because he's an amazing director. I don't know if you guys have seen No, or he actually had two movies this year because he did Neruda.
Yeah, he made
also.
Neruda and this movie back to back.
That's insane. And it's just interesting to me that it would be a young Chilean filmmaker who would have such a refreshing take on like American royalty, but maybe that's why. Maybe he, brought a fresh eye to it.
It was incredible. I hope all of you have the opportunity to work with Pablo one day because it's like the greatest. It was really one of the great experiences of my life. He has such a unique take and such, a great director. You guys, I hope you agree with me, always has a little bit of perversion in the way that they see things. Like they just don't see things the way anyone else does. It's always like from the side, and he would just, the kinds of ideas he would have, and I don't mean perverted in a sexual way, and I mean it in like a just very unusual way of looking at things, very unusual way of looking at the world, and he just always took us into unexpected directions and really loved the actors, I think, in a way that he let us be very free. He created a scenario where all the lighting, the entire space would be lit, and the camera was improvised and on the camera operator, who was also our cinematographer's shoulder. So we could go wherever we wanted and continue the takes as long as we wanted and improvise. And if we messed up, we could start over again. We could go back in the scene, and it just really left it to us and trusted us with that. And it was an incredible gift, and I think allowed us to be really free and try things in different ways.
I know Darren Aronofsky. I think he acquired this script way back in 2010, and you guys had just worked together on Black Swan, to great effect, by the way. But it took a while for it to come to fruition, and I was curious. He moved into a sort of a producing role. Did Pablo sort of have to pitch himself as a director to you, or was he already attached when you came on board?
Well, Darren had originally gotten it for himself with someone else, and with another actress, and then he decided he didn't want to direct it anymore, and then brought it to me. And I was like, I'm very interested in this, but I think it really needs a great director behind it because, again, it has been done. It needs that eye and that spirit behind it. And then Darren was on the jury of the Berlin Film Festival when Pablo's film El Club was there. And he called me up and he was like, I just saw this incredible director's work. You need to watch his stuff. You need to meet him. And I did, and I met him and saw that this was a very sort of unconventional but really smart choice, because Pablo's films, if you haven't seen them yet, are very politically minded, and he's also very interested in sort of how politics is crafted, and the sort of fiction of politics and television of politics, and his films really deal with that, even though in Chile until this film. So it was a smart connection to bring him to this project, and of course unconventional because he hasn't made an English language film before this.
And so many things, like I said, American royalty, Chilean director, and you shot it in France. I mean, were you having like culture clash within your body while this was going on?
Yeah, well, it was definitely an interesting mix, and it was interesting to get to shoot it in France because the interiors, we did the exteriors in the U.S., in D.C., Maryland, Virginia, but the craftsmanship that went into the White House and the decor and the clothing is stuff that they still do in France, and so it was incredible to get to sort of take from the artisans there. And also the other thing that was really crazy was that 1 week before we started shooting, the awful Bataclan attacks happened in France. Right. And it was really, I mean, most of our crew like lived in that neighborhood, and a lot of people lost friends, and of course for everyone in the city it was just devastating. And And it was interesting to have that feeling because starting this film, because I think something that's really hard to understand is the collective grief and trauma that happens when an event happens. And of course, the Bataclan attack was very different, of course, from the assassination, but the sense when something like that happens, the fear, the collective grief, the fear, you even have to go outside. Like, we didn't want to go walk on the street, you know, it was scary because you just felt like anything could happen and at any moment. And I think that, you know, if your president gets shot, then every person in the country feels that way too. You're like, no one knows if the country's under attack from another country, if something's going to happen, what's going to happen next. It's really terrifying. And it is sort of a terror attack and assassination. So it had, I mean, not to be crass about it, because of course it's a devastating event, you know, and I don't want to be like, and we used it to make a movie. But it was an interesting, I think, effect on our collective psychology as a group, going into this project, about this, you know, the aftermath of an assassination.
And you were probably all also really close because, I mean, sets in general are close, but something like this where it's like an international crew and, you know, you have, the Americans are basically the cast, I think. Right.
Yeah. And it was like Greta is a friend of mine from before, was very lucky because Pablo didn't realize when he cast her that we were close already. And so it was great because when she came, she was like, she just stayed with me, and it was so nice to, you know, that we could just be together. And actually a lot of the people that Pablo cast, it didn't have to do with that. He didn't realize, but I'd worked with before, which was very, very lucky because I feel like we just had such closeness. To begin with, Peter Sarsgaard I'd worked with on Garden State.
Of course, yeah.
And John Hurt I'd worked with on V for Vendetta. John Carroll Lynch I'd worked with on Anywhere But Here. I mean, also just the greatest actors and great people. And Billy I had known for a really long time, even though we hadn't had the opportunity to work together.
I didn't even realize that. You're like the new Kevin Bacon.
I'm just getting old. It's now, you know, going. I think the older you get, the more you've had a contact with everybody.
And, you know, it is such a daunting task to portray someone as iconic as Jacqueline Kennedy. At the same time, there's so much out there, but how do you know what to take in and what to discount?
It is difficult because a lot of the materials out there are kind of gossipy, trashy, you know. I know, and I've read them all. I'm sorry. I know, they're super fun to read, but you do have to sort of sift out the, like, you know, helpful details that are more feasibly true from the, like, and then she slept with Bobby details that you're like, really? I'm not sure about that. Yeah, but it was really helpful, and a lot of the books, basically everyone who knew her wrote a book. So there's a book by Maud, the nanny. There's a book by Clint, the security guard. There's, of course, you know, basically every character in the movie wrote a book about their relationship with her, which was really helpful to sort of see that. And then, of course, there's the sort of unauthorized biography type things that I also read. But and the most helpful things were finding her in her own words. The interviews, YouTube, as most of you guys know too, is like the most useful resource for an actor. We can really find everything, and so to see her old interviews, there are interviews from when he was running for Senate, and she was just so green, and they ask her oh, so you must really love your husband. She goes, oh no, like all embarrassed. And then she's like, wait, I just said no, didn't I? And they're like, do you want to try that again? And they're like, okay. And then they show like take two, and they're like, so you must really love your husband. She's like, no. And she's like, I did it again. And it's so great because you just sort of see the evolution of this public persona that she was so fresh and then she became so polished and really understood how to present herself and how important image was and recognize that. And you also see the difference between the public and the private voice. So like the White House tour, of course, which we went over so much because Pablo wanted to reproduce it exactly. So that I just listened to over and over and over and over again and worked with a dialect coach. And that really helped a lot with the voice and even like this unusual pauses and elongation of certain words and the gesture and the batting the eyelashes, the femininity, the sort of studied coyness of how she wanted to present herself. And then in contrast to, I really was very much helped by she did a series of tapes for Arthur Schlesinger Jr., for his oral legacy of the White House after Kennedy's assassination. And she did, I mean, there's like 10 hours or something of tapes that is accompanied by the written transcripts of their interviews of everything that happened. And her voice is so different. Granted, it's after the assassination, but that's really where like you really feel that bitterness, the wit, and the hyper intelligence and alertness to everything that was going on. She knew everyone's name who had ever walked into the White House and what their agenda was. She, she makes funny, mean comments about everyone. And it was great because they were kept private until after her passing, and Caroline Kennedy released them after, and she left even things that were like a little bit offensive in there because she was like, this is public record. So it also helps, although there are parts that Jackie edited out, which also allows for a lot of license, I guess, for us to have added the things that we imagine her to have said and disallowed from being published.
I mean, the accent and the voice are so specific. It's like, I don't know, almost like mid-Atlantic, but British. Was it a voice you think she put on, and how did you perfect that? Did you work with a vocal coach?
I worked with a dialect coach, Tanya Bloomstein, who is amazing. And the accent's really, really tricky, but I think it was genuine because it's consistent in her private and public recordings. And it's consistent over the course of, all the many words that we have her on tape saying. She's consistently makes the same sounds for the same words. Whereas Peter had a much harder challenge because Bobby Kennedy was like all over the place. Like sometimes he would say things really British, sometimes he would say things really Boston, although it also allowed him to kind of like, anything is acceptable.
So that was a choice.
But with Jackie, it was great because it gives sort of like a diagram of her background, because you have a lot of New York, Long Island, which is where I'm from. I can go there very quickly and very easily. So there's that sort of like Bouvier, like, Grey Gardens side of like, you
so
can
hard
hear
not to think
like
of Grey
talk
Gardens.
and walk and what, all of that. But then she has the Miss Porter's finishing school where they clearly learn to talk like ladies. So there's sentences like, I rather like this whole, like, so it's like this very unusual combination of like British and Long Island. Classy.
Could you go in and out of it, like on set, or did you find you had to stay in the accent because otherwise?
I have to get out of. I respect people who are able to stay in character all the time, but I can't do it. I feel really silly. I feel more like authentic as a person because I don't know. I can't go like back to my family and be like, hi everyone. They'd be like, stop. And I don't know who can get away with that.
Yeah.
But I don't know, stronger people than me.
Especially when you have a kid. They don't let you get away with that. They're
He'd be like,
Mom, come on.
stop.
We have a question from Kayleen. Wants to know, oh, you're back there, okay. What do you find is more challenging, having to create a new character or having to portray a real person?
It's a good question. I think that, I don't know, I guess I'm kind of a studier. So for me, having something to study is easier in a way than just coming up with it, even though it probably takes a lot more work. Maybe I should do more work on the imaginary characters, make it as much as the real life characters. But and this is my first time portraying someone who's so well known, who's real. I mean, bless you. But
everyone's so jealous right now. You blessed that person. They're like, I want to.
I have no magic powers. I just have I'm just very polite. Yeah. So I think it's I think I did a lot more work doing a character that's so well known than I would do for a regular character. But in a way, it was, I had what I needed to do. I was like, I need to learn the voice. I need to learn the accent. I need to learn the gesture and read all these books about the person. And it's like you've got your tasks.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's part imitation to some degree, because especially someone this well known, but then you also have to find the character.
Right. But the interesting thing is that from all of that research, it lives inside of you, and it's you guys know, it's like you do all that work before, and then you get to set, and it's like in your bones. It's not you don't have to sit there and think like, oh, what is this moment? It resides within you because you've done all this reading and practice, and it's all prepared.
I have a question. Oh, I'm so sorry if I mispronounce anyone's name. From Megan Cornoyer. Was that close? Close? What is it really? Canoyer. I'm sorry, Megan Canoyer. Wants to know if you get scared or intimidated when you get material with such a challenging emotional commitment, i.e. the assassination scene in Jackie. Do you trust your craft and the work you've done creating the character to get you through? Or do you approach it differently? What extra prep do you need to do?
That was actually, the assassination scene was the hardest. And I think because it's the tapes are so well known that it's limiting in a way, because it's like you can't scream or cry because she wasn't doing that, and she has a look on her face that we all recognize, and it's a very, very well-known tape. The physicality of it, I mean, she goes out onto the back, so to try and be authentically emotionally real, but then also you can't really put too much of your own imagination of what you would do or something in that moment, because you are limited by the reality. So it's definitely harder to do that sort of scene than, of course, something like, confessing to the priest that is our imagination within a real, within obviously a real character story. And it's scary. I definitely was, feeling that this could be a very bad mistake and choice in my life to do this. I was like, this is really taking on something that could fail wildly at.
I'm curious, and this may sound like a silly, superficial question, but everything in this movie, the production, I don't think people know that this is an independent movie and just how much it was made for, because it looks stunning. And I'm curious how much getting into the hair and putting on the costume actually helped you find that character, because I would think just, putting on the pillbox hat to some extent helps you find Jackie.
Yeah, it gives you confidence in your ability to make people believe and take them with you on an emotional journey when you look like the person. Because I never looked at myself in the mirror, and I've never been told by anyone you look like Jackie Kennedy. It's not, I'm a, small woman with brown hair, but apart from that, not not exactly a doppelganger, you know? And so when you have professionals helping you look like the person, you're like, okay, this is certainly a step closer to helping me have people believe me as a first condition of going along for the journey.
Were you surprised when you saw like the first hair and makeup test? Because I mean, like I remember my jaw dropping when I saw this poster.
Well, the wig does a lot. I mean, people would always like put it on in the in the room, like men, women, children, elderly, and you know everyone looks like Jackie with the wig. So, yeah, big shout out to the hair department, makeup department, costumes.
You're like, Peter, take my wig off.
Yeah, exactly.
We have a question from, I think it's Javin. Oh, cool. Wants to know, what is the audition process like for you, or how do you choose your projects? I have to imagine it's been a long time since you auditioned.
I am very, very lucky that I don't usually have to. But it also is, there's a downside to that too, because people tend at this point to think they know what I can or can't do. So there are times when people don't want to consider me for a part, and I beg to get to audition to show them that I can do something that they don't think I can do, and they're like, "We've seen your stuff." No,
really?
You know. So auditioning, I think the bright side of a really difficult process, as you guys all know, as we all know, is that it's an opportunity to show people what you can do and you know, show them a side that they might not normally think of you as. And choosing projects, it's all over the map for me. I'm kind of impulsive about how I choose. A lot depends on the character, of course, the script, and more recently, the director has become sort of the central part of it, because Nicole Kidman actually said to me something that stayed with me for so long. She was so lovely to me. We worked together on Cold Mountain when I was 21, and she said to me, if you work with an interesting director, she said, you never know how a movie's going to turn out, which is completely true. In, you know, now coming from, you know, 25 years, you never know how it's going to turn out, but you can ensure that your process is interesting if you're working with an interesting director. And it was such great advice, because it's like that's the part you always keep with you, and that's the part that's really meaningful, whether the movie's, even if the movie's wildly successful, the part that you remember is the actual process of making it and the meaningful experience that you have with the other human beings you work with. And so that's been great. And then recently, the extra layer, which I'm sure many of you who have families can relate to, is logistics. And when something can shoot in my hometown, that makes a really big difference. And why we need to insist more on shooting in LA and New York for New York actors, because it takes a big toll on families to have to be constantly moving around, and I think and also makes things just not possible to do sometimes. You know, they're like, go to New Zealand for 4 months. I'm like, what planet are you living on? Like, I have a kid in school.
I'm trying to rack my brain around the idea that somebody might not let you audition for something. I mean, have there been roles you feel, you know, you didn't get to be seen on or didn't get because they just couldn't picture you?
Sure. I mean, I'm not gonna like start talking about them, because I always feel like that's kind of nasty to like people who do it to be like,
yeah, exactly.
Imagine me in that part, you know. But and also, I always tend to like, after something's done, I'm like, feel lucky when it's great that I get to be an audience member, because I love seeing great movies and great performances. So, but yeah, I think, you know, people start when they see you a lot. For, you know, I've been working for 25 years. People see you in a certain way, and they start getting certain ideas about what you can and can't do.
I mean, you've worked with so many amazing directors, and you're a very accomplished director in your own right. Your film is beautiful. And you sort of addressed this earlier, but what is it you hope for from a director when you show up from set?
I hope for an interesting vision and perspective and leadership, but and I also hope for someone who wants to, who is open to collaboration and knows how to take your best ideas and leave your bad ideas without being mean about it. Which is, I always think like Darren was like that and Pablo was like that, where like, you know, you would just, I would say things and they'd be like, that's awesome, that goes in the script. And then when I would say things that like, there were most of the things like weren't those, but it never, I never was like, oh man, he didn't listen to me, or he wasn't, you know, he didn't respect that, or it was always just like somehow they were able to like glide over it. And then like, you know, and then there were enough things that they did react to that you're like, okay, this person is listening and knows how to do that with everyone, not just me, like with the production designer, with the cinematographer, that their job is to be able to have the confidence to take everyone's best ideas and know that they're still the boss. It doesn't like threaten their authority to use everyone's best ideas and to, but also not to like just do what everyone else says, obviously to have their own focus and their own going forward.
We have a question from the UK, actually, from Brogan Wilson. I love that name. I don't know if it's a male or a female, but Brogan. Hi, Natalie. Such a huge fan of yours. Greetings from the UK. Oh, what was your favorite costume that you wore on set?
Oh, thank you, Brogan. My favorite costume. I don't know. I feel like it's hard to talk about costumes and except for in the way that they were helpful for the character. And I felt like the pink suit, of course, was, I feel like it almost serves as like the ominous music in a movie because we all know it so well. And then as soon as she's wearing it, you know what's going to happen. And so all that anxiety builds up. And then, of course, it like changes. There are these like movements of it because then when it's bloodied, it has a whole different significance. And I don't know, it's just rare when a costume has that much weight and push for an emotional push for a character.
I'm curious. I mean, obviously the Kennedy family is notoriously private, but do you happen to know, have you heard any whispers if anyone in the family has seen the movie?
I haven't, but it's been really interesting actually. At a lot of the screenings that we've had where I've gotten to meet people after, a lot of people who said they knew her or friends with her family have come up to me and have been they haven't said anything about the family, but they have said that, you know, people have come up to me and be like, I hope they see it because we think it's really you know, really shows her in a complex light and in a positive, even though of course it's complicated, it's human, but in a positive way and way that respects her legacy finally. And I mean, it's been amazing to get to hear from people who knew her that they felt that it was representative of her, which was of course the biggest hope you can dream about.
I mean, that's got to be the best review you can hope for, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely.
But all the rave reviews are nice, too. Well, I want to thank you so much for being here weirdly with us on Inauguration Day. I just realized. and letting us escape.
Thanks for reminding us.
I know. But yes, but letting us escape into past reality for a little while. And again, congratulations on another amazing performance.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.